Collecting Heroes Season 1, Episode 1. I'm so excited to bring you this podcast or show, whatever we want to call it. But first, before all that, just let me do a quick introduction. My name is JD. I'm from Sydney, Australia, and a pop culture enthusiast, as well as being a collector myself. When I came up with the idea for Collecting Heroes, I was thinking about how much the things I own are fueled by my passions for the characters and movies and shows, and in my case, Batman being top of that list. But that passion comes from my own experiences when I was young and also now as an adult. So that's what I want to capture in this podcast, and each episode I'll be having conversations with other collectors where I want to hear their stories and what drives their fandom, not just how long have you collected or how many things do you own. I mean, that will probably, be part of the convo, but more what is at the heart behind their collecting. So that's why I'm really excited by this, because not only do I get the chance to geek out with these people, but hopefully you can join us in that feeling of shared love as well. So whether you are or whether you're not a collector yourself, I'm sure this can appeal to anyone, and I'm really happy to have you here listening to this show and this episode, Season 1, Episode 1 of Collecting Heroes. Yes, it's time to get things started, and welcome my first guest to the Collecting Heroes podcast, David Solove. David, thank you for joining me.
It's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
And David is a collector of the Muppets. I'm very excited to have you on the show. And the reason being is that when I saw your collection online, it really brought a lot of joy to me to have a look at the video on your YouTube channel and see that. And I think for anyone who loves the Muppets, they would feel the same looking at your collection. So colorful, all those characters that we love, like Kermit and everyone else. But that's me looking at it. For you, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me, how did you get into the Muppets? What was your first memories of the Muppets, and how did you come to love them?
Oh, wow. That's as long as I can remember. So I was born in 1968, so a year before Sesame Street went on the air.
Okay.
So, was essentially there from the beginning and had an awareness of who the Muppets were then. I had an Anything Muppet puppet, and I remember having a Grover puppet, and I think an Ernie, maybe a Bert, but the Ernies with the, hard plastic heads.
Oh, yeah.
So I just knew. I don't remember a time I didn't know who the Muppets were. So I was certainly very aware of them when the Muppet Show first came on the air in 1976, and was a fan from the get-go. I mean, I just absolutely loved it. I can't even pinpoint why at that point, looking back now and what continues to bring me pleasure about them. But it was just a happy place for me. And I remember some of the first things I got were, the Muppet Show cast albums when they came out. I remember, so my parents, for birthdays for my brother and I, when we were young, we'd get $2 for every year we were born. So on my 10th birthday, I remember them giving me a $20 bill, and I could buy that first Muppet Show cast album with it. So that's one of the earliest.
On vinyl, we're talking about?
What's that?
On vinyl? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all there was back then. That was pre-cassette tapes too, I think.
Yeah, I remember actually one of my earliest vinyls as a kid was, and I'm showing my age here as well, obviously, but it was a Disney one, actually. It was Disco Mickey or something. I think so. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
It was and it had Disco Duck, I remember, was one of the songs on there. Yeah. I definitely remember. And actually, funnily enough, as a child, I would get given, my regular pocket money was $2.
There you go.
And I used to use that to go out and buy music as well. And that was when after cassettes had come in, that I was doing majority of that
Well, speaking of audio cassette, it's Muppet Show. These were the days before, even VCRs. So I would set up an audio tape deck next to the TV set
Yeah.
and record the Muppet Show. So, for many years, that was my only way to continue to connect with the actual show, was just listening to the audio. I remember some of my favorite episodes now are the ones that I listened to so much back then, the Roger Miller episode and the Phyllis Diller episode. And these were ones I just had on audio.
Oh, wow. I think any older listeners would remember, recording things on cassettes as well.
Yeah.
I remember doing that from the radio. Like that's how you did it. You couldn't download stuff. That was the way you downloaded things back in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting with each kind of advance in, audio technology, from, audio tapes to CDs and or not just, and video as well, from, VHS to DVD to Blu-ray. The Muppets have been my reason for getting the next technology.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I finally got a CD player when Muppet Hits came out on CD, and DVD when stuff started coming out on DVD, and Blu-ray, so I could get that next set of special features, whatever. So Muppets have been my advance in technology.
Does that mean you have Muppets on Laserdisc as well?
I actually don't. I have some just in nostalgia as a collect, but we never had a Laserdisc player.
I don't think many people did. It was very short-lived.
But they're beautiful. They're beautiful little things to have in a collection.
And do you still have the original vinyl that you were talking about, the one you bought for $20?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people hang on to things that long. That's awesome.
I pretty much every Muppet thing I have, like, there's no reason I ever would have gotten rid of it. And
another thing that I think I loved when I was watching your video of you describing Muppets, in your love for Muppets, with your YouTube video where you go through your collection, is that connection that you talk about, how it shaped your career. Can you tell me a little bit about that, and how obviously you got to love it as a child, but then where that propelled you as an adult now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started just doing puppet shows, initially for myself. I remember having, the Fisher-Price Kermit and the Fozzie and lip syncing to the albums. And then I started doing puppet shows as a kid. I was young, but I remember doing it for birthday parties. So that was kind of my introduction to performing.
Yeah.
And then I started doing live theater and wound up majoring in acting in college. So that was kind of an extension that all started with a love for the Muppets. In college and through high school, I did a lot of children's theater. And at some point, I'd heard about Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Clown College, where they actually trained clowns to go on the road with the greatest show on earth. And I'd never seen Ringling Brothers, had never thought about being a clown, but I thought these would be good skills for children's theater, which I loved.
Yeah.
Started to study, learn more about clowning. About the same time, I kind of discovered Charlie Chaplin, and was lucky enough then to get accepted into Ringling's Clown College, which was about an 8-week program. Graduation of that then was a show. You spent a few weeks rehearsing. We all did a show. Producer of the circus was there and handpicked who they wanted to go on the road with the circus.
Yeah.
And I was not chosen. I was an alternate, which meant if an opening ever came up, they might give me a call or they might not.
Is that like a clown understudy? How does that work?
Standby, maybe. Yeah. We weren't traveling on the road. We weren't, I just kind of went on with life, came back, was working in a bookstore, and was like, well, that was a fun chapter in my life. And figure out what's next. But then I got a call from the talent producer saying they had an opening on one of the 2 units. Was I interested, and could I be in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1 week? So my mom drove me down there, and that's where I spent the next 11 years of my life.
That's
traveling
amazing.
on the. It was amazing. And to tie it back to the Muppets, as a clown, I felt very much like a living Muppet. You know, it was larger than life. It was slapstick. It was, you know, bright characters and just ridiculousness, you know, and the whole point was spreading laughter and joy. You know, what could be more Muppety than that?
Definitely. I definitely think that, yeah, that is something that the Muppets, you know, are all about, right? Is bringing that joy. And I think that's something that Jim Henson really set out to do, you know, through his journey.
Absolutely.
You know,
I mean, I think it shaped me, and not just as, you know, into the career I chose, but very much the person I am. My outlook on life, you know, a certain optimism, a silliness. I mean, without a doubt, I would not be the person I am or have lived the life I lived if it weren't for the Muppets.
I love that, and that's what, you know, that's what these things can do for us. You know, we talk about things that we love in pop culture and the things that we collect. It's funny, you go back to, I don't know if you're familiar with the quote from Fight Club, where I think it's along the lines of the things that you own end up owning you. But I mean, you obviously own that as a person. You know, in the ethos of the way you live your life, you know, trying to bring joy to people. And I think that's fantastic. And the Muppets, as I said, they brought joy to millions. They still bring joy to millions.
Yeah.
And, you know, Sesame Street's still around, you know, you were
Yeah.
talking about. I remember growing up with Sesame Street. I remember growing up with the Muppets as a kid and watching the TV show and the movies, and absolutely loved the movies. In fact, that's probably one of my next questions, I guess. Do you have a favorite Muppet movie?
Oh, the original, The Muppet movie, without a doubt. I mean, I've watched it more times than I can count. It's just, I feel like it's got a bigger heart than the others. I enjoy them all. I mean, I'm always happy to see them. You know, Great Muppet Capers, probably more joke heavy. You know, Muppets Take Manhattan, just kind of the Broadway aspect of it, you know, having been a performer and studying acting, but just that original The Muppet movie is just the songs, the story. Not even a question of which is my favorite.
My favorite movie is Muppets from Space. Actually,
Really?
yeah, I absolutely loved that one. Like, funnily enough, I love the original as well. I actually watched the original a few months back, and I was reminded of how many celebrities they get within these movies as well. You forget, like, when you don't see them for a while, you forget how many celebrity cameos happen in there. I think Steve Martin is one of the ones I think I remember. I think he's in the original movie. I can't remember. I just know there were so many of them. And I was like, every 5 minutes, I was like, oh, there's that person, there's that person. But yeah, Muppets from Space was one of those ones that was really, I just found really silly, and I came to love Pepe as a character, the prawn. And you saw when you first came to our video chat, and I have a little Pepe.
Pepe was
Pepe toy. And he's just got some classic lines that are like little zingers and one-liners I absolutely love.
Of the kind of post Jim Henson era, I mean, definitely a standout and very, very funny character.
Yeah. Before that, I would say that Gonzo was probably one of those characters, and I think that's probably why Muppets from Space also holds a special place for me, because Gonzo being that main character for that storyline. And he was one of the ones that I loved as a kid growing up as well. I remember watching him and with the chickens. The chicken songs were some of my favorite. With your collection, now going back to your collection, because you've got quite the sizable collection in the room. How many pieces? Like, just do you have an estimate of sort of how many pieces you think you might have?
Nah, I don't even know where to start. And what I have in the house here isn't even everything. There's still stuff in storage back at my parents' house. I can't wait to go through those boxes when I see them again, because I don't even know what I have. I mean, it's in the thousands. I don't even know, you know, if you start counting individual figures and, you know, multiple copies of DVD releases. And I would say I probably have just about every book that's come out. And yeah, no, I wouldn't even know where to start on a number.
That's fair. That's fair. And look, as I said, there's quite a bit I can see in the room. But like when you said there's things in storage, I can't imagine how long it would take to actually go through all those different places and
Yeah,
get
if you've got,
everything.
hold on, I'll start counting. You know, how long is the pod?
All right, cool. 1, 2. Yep. Oh, cool. All right. I don't know how long people will want to listen to the show. Welcome to the Counting Heroes podcast.
Wow. And lightning goes
One Muppet. Ha ha ha.
one thing.
Well, I guess that's another perfect question. You talk about the book collections and all the different things you have. Is there any type of piece that you don't collect within the Muppets? Like, is there something that you sort of avoid collecting, or that over the years you've sort of gone, that really doesn't really fit the collection. I'll get rid of those.
Nothing. Not a lot of Sesame Street stuff, just because there's so much. My focus has been more on kind of the Muppet Show Muppets, though I have a lot of Fraggle Rock stuff, some Dark Crystal. I used to collect the lapel pins and kind of shied away from that again because there's just so many, in Disney. And I live, by Orlando, so we're at the parks a lot, and there's just always new, and just had to draw the line. There's still bills to be paid, and gotta eat. So
it's the hazard of being a collector, right? Is do I eat this week, or do I buy another Kermit?
Right, and then I've got. I don't buy everything now. In general, there's some things, but it used to be if there was a Muppet thing, I had to have it. I mean, now I get stuff and there's not even any place to display it anymore. There's stuff sitting on the floor in here because I'm just out of shelf space. So pick and choose. My wife is a bad influence on me because she's like, no, you got to get it. I'm like, well, where am I going to put it? What am I going to do with it? But every book, I'm a heavy reader anyway. So books I certainly get. Again, every version, new release of a DVD, in the hope that there might be something unseen treasure on it that hasn't been already released. My newest thing that I've been getting a lot of is artwork to put on the walls from different artists. We go to a lot of Comic Cons, and one of my favorite areas is the artist section, and I love digging through their stuff and seeing what Muppet thing they might have. So I really enjoy seeing all those different styles.
I saw that in the photos that you sent me, actually. A lot of the art pieces up on the wall.
Are older. There's a bunch of new stuff that I've gotten because I'm much more deliberately kind of like, okay, I've got an open wall now. Let's see what's out there.
And so a lot of the photos that you've sent me, I think, are probably from your Muppets room, if I'm going to have a guess. How much of it spills out into the rest of the house?
Not a ton. There's a couple shelves. My wife is a knick-knack collector as well. So our entire house is just shelves of Funko Pops and Vinylmations and action figures. So a couple of those shelves are in the living room are allowed to be devoted to the Muppets as well as some lunch boxes up on top of things. So
you said she's a bad influence. Usually, like in some couples, it's usually you have your collection and you try and keep it in a contained area away for you, so that your partner is not getting worried about it spilling over into the other parts. But she's just as bad.
Yep, and she encourages it. And I mean, we have an entire room in the house. Just all it is my Muppet collection. Like, it serves no purpose. At one point it was an office as well, and I had a desktop computer in here. But as I've transferred, I use a laptop. I sit out at the dining room table. So that desk went away and more shelves went in. And I mean, I don't want to say pointless because it brings me such joy, but it serves in the house other than being a space for Muppet stuff.
But that's a great function in itself, right? Is bringing you joy. I mean, that's the thing we want in life, right? Like, everyone's trying to find their happy place and that joy. And you've got that little happy place within your home that you can go.
I do. And I will come in here and just stand and look at all the things on the shelves and, memories connected with them. And, I forgot I had that little thing in the corner. So yeah, it is. I mean, absolutely, literally my happy place.
What's the first impressions? I mean, obviously we know what your wife obviously thinks, and being a collector herself. But what's the first impression of your family or friends, or when they first come in and they first experience the Muppet Room?
Well, I think everybody knows. I'm a Muppet guy.
Yeah.
There's no question in my life. And I was a circus clown, so it's not that unusual for me. But I don't think anyone really understands like how much I really have. Like, I'm not an idol collector. This is, bordering on obsessive and certainly fanatic. But I think they're impressed, and it's fun to show people because there's a lot of, oh, I had that, or I remember that, and just everybody at some point, even at they have a connection with the Muppets. Everybody knows who the Muppets are, whether it's Sesame Street or Fraggle Rock or the Muppet Show. Yeah. So no, I haven't met anybody who's weirded out by it.
Well, they haven't told you to your face anyway.
Right.
Look, if they did, they're probably not worth having in your place.
That's right. Who needs
them? Who needs them?
But it's interesting that everybody does have a connection and understand. There are certainly worse vices that I could have than collecting Muppet stuff.
Yeah, and it's generational, the Muppets too. Like even that whole Henson thing. I was listening to a podcast. I was re-listening to a podcast actually because I really enjoyed the conversation with Brian Henson, where he was speaking to Chris Hardwick. I don't know if you may have heard this podcast about the ID10T one. And
what is it?
ID10T, Chris Hardwick's podcast. He has 2 episodes where he interviews Brian Henson, and in the second one, they talk a little bit about. There's so many great things that they talk about, but you hear about the generational thing with their family. How Brian had his time, looking after the company, and then Lisa took over as the CEO. Just the history that they go into. It's a great listen. There's so many things. It's hard for me to sort of know which point to talk about. I think and for anyone listening to the podcast, I'll link that in the description as well, so that they can have a look. But it's definitely worth a listen, and it brought me back to a bit of a happy place listening and hearing that. Take a little bit of a serious turn. In your room on your wall, talking about the pictures on your wall, there's one that you have sort of centerpiece. It looks, which is a Life magazine. I think it is cover. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That has that's behind your head there. Yeah. Has Kermit on the cover. I believe is the issue straight after the death of Jim Henson.
That's correct.
That would be 1990. Tell me a little bit about how, do you remember much about that time and maybe where you were when you found out and how you felt?
100%. I know exactly where I was. So I graduated college. It's the year I graduated. And my first job after college was performing at Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And I remember driving around Williamsburg in my car and hearing it on the news. And I mean, I had to pull over. I mean, it was out of the blue. I mean, unexpected. And this was, my idol. This was,
Yeah. He was 53 years old.
Yeah. Who I am was because of this man's creations. So, it was, life-changing in a way. It was just shattering.
Yeah. What was the main takeaway? Do you remember? Because I know we have certain celebrities pass away and there's outpouring of grief. Do you remember a bit about that? How the feeling was at that time with people as well, and talking to other people about it?
I don't remember any real conversations with folks, but I think people, certainly sought out my feelings. Again, knowing that I was, Mr. Muppet.
Yeah.
But certainly a sense of, what's next? Where does it go? Is this the end of the Muppets? But I think back, and it's amazing how long ago it was. I mean, I'm the age now that Jim Henson was when he passed away, which is very mind blowing. But because all that stuff he created is still out there and has really been a part of my day-to-day life. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that, you know, I'm not listening to something Muppets or looking at something Muppets. It feels like he's still been here throughout all that and still having an influence and still spreading joy in the world, because these amazing characters, people who inspired, and the people who continue his legacy. And I mean, the Muppets are still here.
They are. And that's what I was saying before, you know, his children carrying on the legacy with Brian and Lisa. I think that's one of the reasons, you know, we've managed to have that over the years. You know, he left such a big legacy, you know, such a huge body of work as well that he did, and went through and touched so many people within entertainment and other parts of pop culture as well. I mean, even Star Wars, you know. Now, I mean, Yoda is not a Muppet per se, but he was voiced by Frank Oz, and I think they did have a lot of the experienced Muppet creators who actually worked on the Yoda puppet.
Sure, and the whole, you know, the process of creating the characters and the technology for Dark Crystal, and you know, I mean, even back to Emmett Otter and the radio controls for those characters. I mean, each advance he made Yoda possible.
And actually, that's another thing they were talking about in that Chris Hardwick podcast that I was talking about. They touch on some of those other movies, including Dark Crystal, and then they talk about how fantastic it is to have, you know, Netflix be able to pick up a TV show, a modern version of that, for the Age of Resistance, but also Labyrinth. How when Labyrinth came out, it was essentially a flop when it came out, but has become such a cult hit. And I think one of the things Brian said, I can't remember exactly. I don't want to butcher the information, but essentially, in the years afterwards, there are years where Labyrinth makes more money per year, I think, now than it did when it first released.
It's a shame, because I know both lack of success for Dark Crystal and Labyrinth was very hard on Jim. You know, if you read the Brian J. Jones biography, you know, it talks about how it really hurt him. If he could have only seen the life they've had beyond. And I mean, the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance is amazing and just builds on that world and that technology. You know, if he could just see the life these things had.
Labyrinth was a movie I saw at the cinemas, and it's like one of you know, among my early cinema memories as a child. Labyrinth is amongst those. Labyrinth and Never-Ending Story. You know, as well. But yeah, a lot of those movies, and that's why I think, he's, like I say, his legacy, you know, goes on to this day and lives within pop culture and is spread out to other parts of pop culture, and the way that creatures are created in the advent, even when some of the CGI going backwards to now being a bit more of that realistic puppetry, you know, mixed with the computer CGI.
Sure, but so I think, you know, there's a little bit of a backlash on CGI, and things are getting back to some more practical effects.
Practical effects, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, definitely. Do you have a favorite character?
My answer's always been Kermit. I love Kermit. In recent years, I've grown a strong love for Ralph, the dog. From in recent years, getting to see so many of his appearances on the Jimmy Dean Show, and just what a great and funny and strong character he was, and the interplay between Jimmy Dean and Ralph is just delightful. So yeah, Ralph has, whereas Kermit has the kind of the leadership and normalcy compared to the other Muppets, which I
as much as a normal talking frog can be.
Just the sideline on that element. When I was in the circus, I was for a few years the boss clown. So I was in charge of the other clowns, and I had my kind of notebook that I kept things in, had a sticker on it that said, "What would Kermit do?" I felt very much like, okay, I'm the center of this hurricane. I was surrounded by all these crazies, these wacky people, and my job was to know when to rein them in and when to let them loose, when to join in and when to be the boss. So I've always felt
WWKD, what would Kermit do?
yeah, that's exactly my sticker. So I've always had affinity for Kermit, but Ralph has a sassiness to him, very almost understated sense of humor. He has a silliness, but he also can be serious. So yeah, he's just.
I think probably he maybe that type of humor is almost maybe more even geared towards someone, an adult, as opposed to Kermit being that that face of the Muppets that really children see and recognize and identify with.
Yeah. So yeah, but and I've got lots of little peripheral characters I love. Lou Zealand and Fletcher the Bird. I mean, there's so many characters, but yeah, I mean, I've got a Kermit tattoo. That's.
Well, that's the answer right there, right? I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I did have just something else to sort of ask, and that is about your YouTube channel. You created. You have the videos on there where you actually go through. I think almost 60,000 views now on your original Muppet video. Yeah. Do you plan on continuing that, like the YouTube channel?
Hopefully, we'll get back to it. My wife and I, we live in Orlando. We do a lot of theme parks and have fun together. Just kind of started that to kind of document that, and the Muppet thing. Doing my collection, showing that was just okay. What else can we do? What other content? And that certainly has been the one video that has gotten the most comments and responses and reactions too. We did a follow-up of opening up one of the many boxes of stuff that's still in storage, so hopefully we'll do some more of that. But certainly the pandemic threw a kink in things, even though we still go and do things and get out and enjoy the theme parks. More of a restraint to it. We're out there masked. We're just trying to keep our distance from people, especially earlier days.
Of course.
So I think we out of the rhythm and routine of doing it, but I would love to get back to it if for no other reason than just to create memories for my wife and I, and go back and videos.
I hope so. I got enjoyment watching the videos of you guys. I think there was a Legoland one which I found really joyous to watch as well. So I'd love to see more content from you. The Soloves as well, for people who are interested in going and checking that out and subscribing. Talking about Disneyland, and obviously because Disney now owning since I think 2004, I think they've owned the rights to Muppets. Do they still have the 3D show in Orlando?
They do. We do still have it in Orlando.
Yeah.
Yep. It's hopefully it's right outside the Galaxy's Edge Star Wars area, so hopefully it'll stick around, but I don't know as things expand. But yeah, it's the theater still there. That used to have a giant Kermit hot air balloon on the top, but they removed that because it was within the sight lines of the Star Wars area. But there's a Miss Piggy fountain is still out in front.
I've seen the photos of that. It's like a Statue of Liberty style.
Yep. Right? Yep. It used to revolve. It doesn't revolve anymore, but at least it's still there. And actually the bathrooms in that area are Gonzo's Royal Flush. I think that's what it's called, from the reboot movie. There was a shop there which does have some decor that years ago, it was all Muppet stuff, and it's just gradually gotten smaller and smaller. So there's a little corner of Muppet stuff in it now, and it's been closed for, at least a year with the pandemic now, and hasn't reopened. But yeah, the film's still here. We had for a while at Magic Kingdom, Muppets Present Great Moments in American History, which was great. It's probably
hearing about that. Yeah,
it was actual puppets. It wasn't big costume characters, and probably the most Muppet Show like thing I've seen since kind of Jim's days. Like, it had that sense of silliness and anarchy that just feels a little missing from some of the more modern stuff.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's good that they've still got a presence there, because I know that they ended up removing that from the Anaheim,
Right.
Which I like the Disneyland there, which I was a bit disappointed about. I went there in 2018. And I would have loved to have seen it if it had been there still. And I hope to get back there eventually one day again, hopefully to Orlando as well. So I won't keep you any longer. I want to first off thank you again for being on the podcast. Our first episode. I think you're a wonderful guest. I think you've got a wonderful collection, and I've really enjoyed talking to you about it. Before we end, did you want to plug? I've already mentioned your YouTube channel, The Soloves. Do you want to spell that for people as well?
It's Solove. So Soloves is S-O, love, L-O-V-E, and then an S on the end because it's plural. Soloves.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. So, like I said, if anyone wants to subscribe, they can go there. Any other plugs for social media where people can
Not really.
You?
I don't have much of a social media presence.
That's fair.
So my wife posts all of our pictures and everything, so I just leave it to her. But I just want to say this has been a joy, just a fun conversation with you, and I can talk about Muppets, ad nauseum, because they're in my soul and in my heart and in my bloodstream. So thank you for inviting me on to share my love of the Muppets.
Oh, again, thank you for being here. It was my pleasure. And who knows, maybe later down the track, we'll see how many episodes in we get to Collecting Heroes. Maybe we'll need to do a part 2, get some of those extra stories out.
I would absolutely love it.
All right, David. Well, enjoy the rest of your night. And for all our listeners, enjoy the rest of your day, night, wherever you are. It's been a pleasure. My first collector in my collection of podcasts. So, yep. Thank you for listening. And I don't know how to. This is my first episode. I don't know how do you wrap up a podcast.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you, and bye. Big thanks to David, and also to you for making it all the way through to here. If you did like the episode, please consider following or subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. But also, you can join me on Instagram @Collecting Heroes, where you can see photos of the collections, the people that I'm talking to, as well as some of my own.